GM everyone. We are here, a bit of a skeleton crew today, but Soil King has some thoughts to share. So, Soil King, floor is yours.
Sweet. All right, GM everybody. I've been thinking a bit more these past few weeks in the context of some of our past discussions here on Beanstalk, particularly as it pertains to the suggestion of like the unwinding of the protocol. And just to give like a quick recap, one of the primary challenges that we had identified in doing so was how to distribute the assets in a way that would be fairly like to what is Beanstalk's yield distribution mechanism that it already has in place, but then also like there's practical considerations of development work that it would require, and also we don't want it would be like for the DAO to implement something where maybe for example, like let's say that there was the idea floated of like returning the funds to the FERT holders. If the DAO were to implement that type of structure, at least from my perspective, it would be pretty foolish to just like send funds back to those wallets directly, because maybe those wallets are either like inactive or maybe they've lost their keys or whatever, right? So there needs to be some kind of opt-in mechanism, I guess, if you will, for people to actually claim those assets as it occurs. And so just kind of a simple idea that I had thought of is again, like if this is the direction that the DAO wanted to take to actually unwind the protocol and essentially just kind of I guess you could say like just pay out whatever funds are still there. It would be interesting if the system just had some kind of base like bean mint amount, irrespective of the delta B, you could say, if the protocol were to mint, let's say 100 beans every season, and those beans could then be distributed to the silo, to the field, and to the barn, just as they have been, historically. And the idea is that it would be, like a decent amount of mints such that, those beans would be distributed, but it would also happen like very gradually so that, it wouldn't be such that people could, just quickly like, come and claim their beans and just, dump them. So yeah, I mean, just, again, just like from my perspective, this has the strength of being according to the existing yield distribution mechanism. So in that sense, there's like some element of fairness, but then also, the yield won't like really get claimed by those wallets that are no longer active or no longer accessible. So yeah, curious if anybody, what you guys' reactions are to that, and if anyone has any, maybe related ideas.
I mean, I find this idea to be quite compelling, to be perfectly honest. It's kind of like a print your way out of the problem where either everyone gets the value distributed according to the normal mechanism and it's just done with like prints as a proxy, or, given we're going to be printing so little, I don't know, maybe it's like you print your way out of the problem on the positive side. I don't know exactly what that would mean, but it's actually very interesting. It would just be like set a minimum mint every season and then like pay it out as normal, as if it were a normal mint.
Yeah, that was my intention. And I think like another like really core strength to this is that there's like very little development required. Like, we're not, we have to come to the DAO and say, hey, can we get like a budget approved to, do this development and, figure out which walls to pay out and, have them able to claim according to these rules, and then there's of course like contract signers involved and all that kind of stuff. So it would be very simple, and I think it could be effective if that's the direction that the DAO wanted to go.
This is like a seppuku proposal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit, but I mean, on the other hand, too, like because there would be some amount of yield introduced, like you could envision a case where people might, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'd have to see what actual APY it would produce, but you could see potential interest for new depositors. Like, even so below peg, right? Because it would still be even at 24 cents.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. In many ways, it feels like, and as much as I've been an advocate for like keeping the OG Beanstalk alive and just kind of chilling for future data collection, this feels like another way to get some very meaningful data. Like what happens with a basement, like a base APY.
Totally, yeah, and it could be done. I mean, I'm just throwing out 100 beans as an example, but we could of course like maybe make some kind of target, like we would say, oh, we want to mint such and such number of beans by this date, and we can just set the speed that way. So it can happen like super gradually. From my perspective, I think the slower it happens, is better. But haven't really dug into those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it kind of dooms the protocol. Hard to see that, like, we would need it to like taper off or something, if you know what I mean. Like, we don't want to get into like an anchor style thing where people are just expecting 20% forever. So I don't really know how to wind it down.
Yeah, I mean, this was I'm really just suggesting this in the context of like that earlier conversation. I think it was a call from I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. That was specifically about unwinding the protocol. This is kind of what came to mind to me after that discussion.
So, I mean, I feel like that if we wanted to wind it down, this would be an elegant way of doing it. But, to the point where we're like, maybe if there's a base yield, it grows. Like, I do think we would want to make it such that there's a way to, at least potentially print the way out of it, if you know what I mean. But if it's just in perpetuity, it's like it's going to print and then blow up. So I think the open question on this topic would be like how to appropriately toggle this auto mint.
Could just be price, just like price below, I don't know, 75. Because that's a great point. I mean, if if there there would be a winding down. However, if there were to be some kind of recovery, like you're right, it would be appropriate to disable it. So it could be simply just on the price. Like, I don't know, just throwing out a number like maybe price below 75 cents. Have the basement.
Yeah, I just feel like the game theory there doesn't, like, to me, it's one thing to say we're just going to print until everyone's taken all the money out and this thing dies, like actual seppuku. But I think it's another thing if we're trying to figure out what it would look like to print our way out of it. And in that case, I do think something as simple as like just a hard stop on price is probably not the meta. And then it's like, well, if we're going to do it properly now, we probably want to minimize development effort. But if we're going to give this a shot, like, we should give it a real shot, I feel. So very interesting. Very interesting. Soil King. You are this is super interesting. I see why they call you the Soil King. I mean, I'm wondering, like, is there a way, like maybe it's like based on supply? Like we're gonna like this percent prints up to a supply of 1 billion, and then this percent, it'll like scale down from, let's say we do 25% or something, 20%, 25% from now until the supply hits 1 billion. It'll probably die as a result. But if it didn't die from 1 billion to 2 billion, we scale it down significantly or something, like linearly over the next billion.
Yeah, I mean, I think having it go that long is probably overkill. I mean, at least like looking at the
You got to
current
pay back the debt,
liquidity
Tommy.
levels. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but at some point, I think the sunrise stops getting called because the beans, aren't enough to pay the caller.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the point where it dies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very interested in this. I'm curious what the community would think about something like this. I can't say I'm so excited about signing Beanstalk up for Bushido code. But it's definitely very interesting and probably the most compelling proposal I've heard on this front by a lot, I think.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say like, oh yeah, like I'm super excited about this too. I mean, obviously, it does kind of represent like that winding down, but again, if that's the direction the DAO wants to go, I think this would be a good way to do it. So I don't know. I think it would be interesting to have like, maybe not like, develop anything at this point, but we've been talking about a lot of stuff, over this past month, call it, and maybe to have some kind of one of those temp check votes or something that, we could just see, who comes out to vote on that, even to gauge like what kind of stock is paying attention, but also just to see what people's preferences toward this stuff.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this. In terms of next steps, would you be willing to write up a small proposal and post it in the general chat, and then we'll take it from there?
Yeah, sure. I could do that.
Wonderful. Anyone else have thoughts on this?
You mind summarizing it?
The summary is we would basically sign Beanstalk up for a suicide mission, whereby the protocol would just start printing, likely targeting some APY, with the expectation that the most likely outcome is that this is the fairest way to wind down the protocol and distribute the funds underneath the unripe LP, by basically paying out mints to all parties in the system until it's all gone. And the the mission element of it, other than just dying, is that potentially through having like a some fixed APY, that people would participate again, which I think is very unlikely, but that would be like there's a potential for it to live. However, I think that's pretty unlikely given what's gone on, but that's the summary. And then I guess the last step would be like when to wind it down, and we thought the so far the best idea I think has been that it'll happen up, the mint will be fixed, some fixed APY up to some supply, and if we exceed that supply, then the mint will start to, like, the APY will start to wind down.
Yeah, so I'll write a proposal for that, and I'll get some data too on like what amounts of bean mints, like what kind of APYs that would yield, like in a silo, etc.
Great. Thank you very much, Soil King. Anyone else have anything they're interested in discussing? Cool. I think we'll leave this open for another 30 seconds or so and see if anyone else has anything they want to speak about before we wrap this up. All right. This one was short, but very sweet. Take care, everyone.
Bye.